Hi and welcome to Mini Adventure. I wanted to say a brief word about safety before we start the video. Safety is very important. Just want to remind everyone to be safe while they're working on their vehicles. Be careful. If you're crawling under the vehicle, make sure it's properly supported and you got jack stands under it. If you're going to be working around any flammable fluids, gasoline, make sure you're in a well ventilated area. If you're going to be working with brake fluid or anything like that, be careful. If you get any of that kind of brake fluid on your exterior finish of your car, if you don't immediately wipe it up, it'll start peeling the paint off. Just encourage everyone to think before you do something. If something doesn't look safe, stop, re-examine what you're doing and make sure that what you're doing is safe. I always recommend to wear a pair of mechanics wear gloves. Now, you may see me not wearing them sometimes. That's because if I have to reach up in there and get the proper feel for a bolt or a fastener, and then just sometimes you can't grab it when you have gloves on. But just be careful. If the engine's still hot, make sure you let it cool down. Of course, never open the radiator while the engine's still hot. I know if you've worked on cars for a while, a lot of these things, you know, you're saying, well, why is he telling me all this? Well, someone may be watching this video that's new to working on cars and they may not think about that. A lot of people have been scalded really badly by opening up a radiator. It seems like common sense, but all the time you hear about those kind of things happening. So just want to bring safety to the forefront and think about that whenever you're doing something, that you remember always safety first. And once again, thanks for tuning in to Mini Adventure. Alright, well, good morning. This morning we're going to do a little short video on how to remove the oil pan on this 2007 Mini Cooper S with the turbocharged 4-cylinder. We're having to remove this oil pan, not because it was leaking, but because the timing chain guides and tensioner and everything are being replaced, and of course we need to check that oil pan and make sure that we clean that out, get all of the plastic pieces or any metal pieces or anything that broke off of the timing chain guide assemblies. We need to clean the oil pan out. So that's why we're taking it out this morning. And the tools we're going to need this morning to do that are going to be, of course, a ratchet and extensions, an 8mm socket to remove the oil pan bolts, and various extensions to be able to do that. And then we've got a rubber mallet. We're going to use this to tap on the oil pan in order to break it loose. You don't want to use a metal hammer or a big maul or anything. It's just a little rubber hammer like this. Just gently tap it and it should come off. And then here we have what this is a very large pair of external snap ring pliers. Bought these to work on taking apart manual transmissions, but they work really good to get the sealing ring off of the downpipe and muffler or resonator where they connect together right under the oil pan. So I'll demonstrate to you how to take that off here in just a second, but these are the tools you're going to need, and also of course a torque wrench in order to put the oil pan back on with the gasket, which I already have also. So I'll get everything set up and I'll be right back. Alright, well, we're crawling under here now. We got everything set up. Got my lovely wife here holding the camera for me. And the first thing that I realized when I got under here and started trying to take this apart is that this pipe here runs right over where there's two bolts in here. And it makes it really hard to get these out. So you know, there's got to be a better way to do that. So I've already put in a new oil feed line for the turbo on here, so I'd already had this off. And this sealing ring right here is very difficult to get off. I've already loosened it, but it's spring loaded, and it's very hard to pull apart with your hands to get off. And if you are able to get it off with your hands, then actually trying to put it back on is nearly impossible. It's very hard to do. But like I showed you in the opening video, I have this pair of really large external snap ring pliers. They're snap-ons. I bought them used on eBay to work on manual transmissions. So I said, I figured I'd give it a try and see if this would work for that. So you get this in here, it's just like an external snap ring, and you set that on there and you just squeeze it, and use that leverage to get it off. So now that makes it a lot easier, and it goes back on the same way. Just make sure you don't lose that nut. And you pull that off and drop your tailpipe down like this. Now you have more room to get your hand up under here and work. And as you can probably see from there, you can see my locking pin for the flywheel as I'm still working on the timing chain. But like I said, I want to get this oil pan off so I can check it out and make sure that I get all the plastic pieces and there's nothing stuck in the oil pump. So this is 8mm bolts on here, and so we just take all these off. I've already gotten some of them off, but I'll let the few in here. So we'll spin these off, and when you get all the bolts out, more than likely it's not going to just fall out. It's going to be stuck to the engine. So what you're going to need to do is use the rubber mallet I showed you in the tools and just gently tap on the pan all the way around. And you just keep tapping on it. Don't whack it real hard. You don't want to break or bend your pan. So I have 4 bolts in here so we can to hold the pan on. So I've already broken this one apart to look in it. And yes, I did find quite a bit of debris. And the last one I left in is right here. Like I said, I've already broken this one loose.
There it is. I got it.
Alright.
You didn't even have to tap it.
Alright.
That's the other bolt, babe.
Okay. So now you can see the oil pump. Here's your oil pump right here. Praying really hard that there's no issues with this stuff getting up in here and messing up this fuel pump. Preliminary research has shown me that this is anywhere between $350 and $500 for this assembly right here. So, but I know that there are going to be pieces of plastic stuck up inside of this strainer. Whenever I first pulled this off, there was actually a piece of one of the guides that was stuck up in here. Actually, it was stuck this way, and it only about that much of the hole was open to allow oil to go through. So it's probably a good thing that I did go ahead and check it, because restricting the oil flow that much could have possibly caused some major damage to the engine. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get everything together to clean the inside of this strainer, because if you don't clean what you can't see down in here, when you're running the engine, the volume from the oil pump sucking the oil through, is going to suck all that plastic up right into the strainer, and it's going to cause a restriction, and it's going to reduce your oil flow going into the engine. So it's better to take a few minutes and get as much of this stuff out of here as you can. And with that, I'm going to go, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little piece of wire, and I'm going to make a hook on it to where I can stick it in here and scoop as much of that as I can out Then I've got some spray brake parts cleaner. I'm going to clean all of that out in there and try to force all that plastic out this hole and get as much of it as I can out of there. So with that, I'll be get my tool made and I'll be right back. Alright, so as you can see, I've pulled the oil pan out, and this was all the stuff that I had gotten out of there when I took it out the first time, and everything was, that was all the big chunks and everything out of there. There was just a little bitty small tiny pieces in there. But since then, if you look in here, now there's that big piece of the guide that I never could find. It fell out sometime over the last day or two. It fell out into the pan. So before we put the oil pan back on, I'm going to crawl up under there and I'm going to make sure that there are no more pieces like that stuck up inside the cavity that the timing chain runs in, or down on top of the oil pump and all that. So it's a lot of work, but it's necessary to do that in order to make sure that you get all these parts out of here and you don't have problems down the road.
You're on.
Alright, well, as you can see, I just made myself a little tool out of number 12, or number 14 actually, wire. I just pulled a piece out of a piece of Romex. And so I'm just going to go around here and start pulling out, and lo and behold, there's a piece that's coming out there. And just keep doing that, make sure I get any loose parts that might be in there. There's another piece. Now all those little pieces will sit there and plug up the openings to your oil pump, and you don't want that. So now I'm going to spray a little spray brake parts cleaner in there. Wipe this off first. Of course, always make sure you wear eye protection when you're working with any of this kind of stuff, because if you get it in your eye, it's not good. The reason I'm using spray brake parts cleaner is it dries very quickly, has a high flash point, and it does not leave residue. And also, just the pressure of spraying it can also possibly dislodge any small parts too. It feels like I got all the pieces out of it. I'll go ahead and clean that off.
Hooray.
But as you can see, it was a good thing that we decided to do that, because I did get a couple of big pieces out of there. I got that one. That's part of the lower part of the front guide, the part that hooks around the rear guide. So like I said, it's very important to make sure you get all that kind of stuff out of there. Let's make one more quick sweep in here, make sure I don't dig anything out that got loosened up by the brake parts cleaner. And so far it feels pretty good. Don't feel anything. So I feel pretty confident that got all the parts out. Alrighty, so now we're ready to go ahead and clean the gasket surface to get ready to put the new oil pan in. I want to get that cleaned up real good, and we're going to clean out the oil pan and prep it also. But I'm not going to bore you with watching me clean all this stuff. Just use, you can use a razor blade scraper. Just be very careful you don't gouge the the aluminum part where it's going to seal. Make sure you get it nice and smooth, and once you get all the old RTV off, then come back and clean it with a paper towel and some spray brake parts cleaner to where it's clean, and then when you put the oil pan back on there, you'll get a good seal. So once we get everything cleaned up, we'll be right back. Alrighty, if you're changing out your oil pan gasket because you had to replace your timing chain cover, I wanted to point out a few things that I found as I was cleaning mine out. If you look down here in the cylinder head, you'll see some drain back holes cast into the cylinder head, and it's kind of hard to see, so I got a little red laser that I'm going to shine in there. You can see down in there, that's where the oil drains back into the engine. Well, I found a little piece of my timing chain guide stuck right in there, and that's why I'm emphasizing this, is you to go through and you check all these holes. There's some on either side. Okay, check all these holes down here all the way, and then make sure you check down here where the timing chain rides. It goes all the way down to the bottom, and as you can see, it's kind of hard for me to get the pointer and everything to work too, but there's where your oil dipstick goes down to. That goes through your front guide, and then here's your your oil pan or your oil pump chain right here. And that drives the oil pump on the bottom, and little pieces can be stuck anywhere in there down at the bottom. So make sure you check all those little hidden spots down there. As well, you can get a pretty good look right here in where your crankshaft hub goes, and then I've got the cover pulled off of the oil pump. As you can see right there, there's the chain drive for the pump, but anywhere up along that chain there can be little pieces stuck, so make sure that you check up in there too. Just about got everything cleaned up. I'm going to put that cover back on the oil pump, and then we'll be ready to reinstall the oil pan. Yeah. Alright, well, we got everything cleaned up in order to mount this pan back on, but I want to go through everything one more time with a flashlight, because I did find some small pieces up on the top on the cylinder head, so I'm checking all of the ports where it comes down to make sure that there's nothing lodged up in there. So far I don't see anything. I don't feel anything on top of the actual, it's stuck on top of the oil pump, just to make sure I get all the little pieces out. Alright, so the book tells us to use some RTV, but I'm not really a big fan of using RTV, so I actually bought a oil pan gasket. It's a Fel Pro, so I mean, that's just a personal preference. If you want to use the RTV, you can. But it's real simple. Just you put the oil pan back up here in place. Once you get the gasket in place. Alright. And then you just gotta get a bolt started to hold it in place. So what I did was, I've got a little corded screwdriver. A 1/4 inch adapter on it. So
So I can just put my 8mm socket on there. And all I'm using this for is just to kind of help me get it started. And then once I get them all the bolts on, then I'll go back and torque them all in place. So until I get 2 bolts in there, I'm gonna have to hold it up with one hand. So that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm trying to get the second bolt in. Alright, well, that's got that on, so I'm just gonna go around and start all these bolts. Alright, and now we got the 2. They're the hard ones to get to because of this tailpipe.
The gloves are coming off.
It's hard for me to grasp the bolt the way I have to do it. What I normally do is I just come from both sides and get the bolt lined up, and then I just turn it with my 2 fingers, 2 middle fingers, to get it started. Now that I've lowered this part of the exhaust. Now I can reach this bolt a little better. Alright, so now I've got all the bolts in place. All I got to do is just go ahead and tighten them. There's no real specific sequence according to the book on how to do it, but I like to start in the middle and then alternate my way in an X pattern all the way out to the ends, and then once I get them all torqued down once, and I go back and check them all again. And according to the children's manual, they're supposed to be tightened down to 106 inch-pounds, so that's not really very tight. It is screwing into aluminum, so be really careful that you don't over tighten it and possibly strip the bolts out. Then once I get all that tightened down, I'll go ahead and put this clamp back on and bolt the exhaust back up using that big external snap ring plier. I'll get that back on and tighten it up, and then the oil pan will be done and be ready to go. So thanks for tuning in.